Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. Jesus Christ, my name is Damien here with my co-hosts Matt and David. We have some new intro music, as you guys heard right there, getting a little fresh start to the podcast, and we're going to have an announcement just after we go through the rundown here. So on this episode, we're going to go through Julio Rodriguez signs a massive extension. We have some MLB rule changes that are coming to 2023. The minor leagues are
good. I had a bit
recognized
of
as a
a
union
hectic
now,
day.
and then some other
Matt, how
milestones
you doing
/ injury news. But before we get to all that, how you doing, David?
Doing pretty well. I think we've both had some car trouble, so but yeah, I've doing good. Been just hanging out, looking forward to doing an episode. It's been a few weeks, so
Yeah, been a few weeks. We had a co-host get sick, and then I was on vacation actually in Chicago with David. Went to Wrigley Field for the first time, saw a game there. It was pretty fun, and saw the whole city of Chicago. And when we were back there talking, David
I'm
and
excited.
I decided
I've been on a couple of
and I
times
guess we'll
now,
just
and
do
I
the
feel
announcement
like
here, to make
we
David
flow
a
really
third
well
time
together.
or
And I know
third
Matt.
co-host
I'm
full
the
time
one
on
who
the show.
introduced Damien and Matt, so it's a good thing to have three pretty good friends being able to talk, having good voices and stuff. And these guys know a lot about baseball, and I'm just honored to also get to throw my 2 cents in here every now and again. It's going to be fun, and we get to I kept telling Damien last week to have a live show at Wrigley Field, but he didn't want to do that. So for everyone who wants us to go live show Wrigley Field, that can be done, but we got to get Damien on board.
I don't know if you can do a live show from Wrigley since I'm here in California, but the whole plan of this is to have three co-hosts where we can be really flexible on schedules, maybe get more episodes out to you guys on weeks where one co-host, can't really do it. And the potential of live streaming some games, later on and through our YouTube channel or however it is, and outreach to you guys more. We really feel that a third co-host and a guy like David, who is one of our friends that we are constantly talk to, has been on the show, and every time he's on, I at least get feedback about how the show flows so much better. Everyone really enjoys the insight that you bring, the way that you allow the show to flow better for all of us here. And I think Matt, I think you kind of feel the same way.
yeah. I mean, when Davian said something to me about it, I said that sounds great because I do feel like even when we're recording, like it feels like we're flowing better, and David and I have similar enough opinions on baseball to where we're not always just arguing at each other, but we have a little bit different opinions, so there's a little bit of just some discussion, a little more discussion here now, and with three of us being here, I think it might be a little bit more informative, a little bit more just a little bit more entertaining to hear some different opinions too. I think that's one of my favorite things about baseball is a lot of sports. There's not that many. There's not really two ways about it, but baseball, you can have just so many opinions. You got the statistical side, you got the analytical side, you got the eye test, just, and then kind of the way the game is played. There's just so many different things you can diagnose and look at with the game of baseball. And I think that, adding more opinions, adding more insights, that's just going to make the show better. And super excited. Like I say, David and I have known each other for quite a while now, 5 or 6 years now. So, it's I'm excited to have him on, and it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, sounds like it will be a good time moving forward. David, I know you got to go. We put you into
Damien's
the
got the
intro
better
here.
player
I know
of the week.
with your car troubles and everything, it's been a
Little
hectic day there. But you
spoilers.
got any last second thoughts before you
He's
got to
on my
head off for the
dynasty
rest of the
fantasy team.
episode?
But
Oh, all right. You want to say why? There it
Oh,
is.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
That's
I
the
know
reason
it's
why. All right, well,
a bit
David,
of a
thank you so much
letdown
for
that I
making time
can't
to
stay
go
for
on to
this
this
one,
intro,
but I
and
think
we
it'll
can't
be
wait to have you full
better for
time
my
on the
mental
show
health to be
starting
able
next
to
week.
kind of relax after what's been a bit of a crazy day. So I'm looking forward to next week.
Absolutely. So we'll talk to you next week. So fun little announcement, Matt, that we had there with David, making him a full time co-host and on the show. And I know it's a lot we've talked about behind the scenes, but let's go ahead and slowly transition our way into what we have to talk about. Since it's been a few weeks, a lot of stuff has happened and some pretty big items of news here for us. But we'll go ahead and start with the Julio Rodriguez extension that he signed with the Seattle Mariners. It's a really weird extension. There's a lot of moving pieces that we still I don't even think comprehend everything there. But the deal is really for a 210 million at 12 years. That is through 2023 through 2029. That has a club option that the Mariners can pick up for 2030, but they have to decide that after the 2028 season. And if the team declines that, then he gets an option for 5 years, 90 million. That takes him to 2034. That's where you get the guaranteed at least of 210 over the next 12 years. But the deal can overall max out at $470 million if all the escalators and options and everything are picked up.
Yeah, so I'm not even gonna start to figure out kind of what this deal actually is from each side. Kind of like what the baseline is for what the Mariners are going to be required to pay. When Julio Rodriguez could become a free agent, I believe is 2028 now.
2029.
So 2029, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, when it comes to this deal, I feel like there's a couple different things. The first thing is that I think he's not. I think they only bought out 1 year of free agency because I think that he would have been a free agent in 2028 if it wasn't for this deal. Is that correct?
I believe so. I
Right,
believe so because he just made his debut this year in the 6 years of service time. Yeah,
right.
so
That would be
it
2028.
it would be 2028. So I think it was 1 year that they bought out that way.
Right. So the Mariners really they got 1 extra year of control. And I think maybe depending there's some escalator in there that if he finishes somewhere in MVP voting, then he stays with the Mariners. Like his player options go away or something. If I'm not mistaken, and it becomes that 400 something million. Either way, the Mariners are on the hook for a lot of money here. And really they're just buying out 1 year of free agency. Julio Rodriguez just became a super rich guy because I mean, at bare minimum, he's going to be making $209 million. The guy's 21 years old and he's a rookie. So, obviously, it settled all the arbitration. He's going to get paid more money early, which is always good for a young player who's been in the minor leagues. But here's, you talk about Julio Rodriguez, the player. He's been insanely good in his rookie year. I mean, he's in normal years he'd be just easy runaway rookie of the year, but this year he's probably rookie of the year. He's got a little bit of competition with Adley Rutschman's been killing it, but I mean he's definitely been 4.5 wins above replacement, a 141 WRC plus, 24 stolen bases. He's run well. Probably could work on the approach just a little bit at the plate, but other than that, he's been incredible, and he'll just continue to get better. In fact, his ZiPS projections have him at over 4 WAR, going forward, which is, for a 21-year-old is pretty insane. So, moving on to the contract. It's always a risk when you put that much money into a guy. I mean, we're seeing it right now with Tatis. I mean, you just never know how it'll go, but if things kind of go as they look like they'll unfold, this is a good deal for both sides, really. So, congrats to Julio Rodriguez and congrats to the Mariners. They locked down their superstar for a long time to come.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, how good he is at 21 and just going to continue growing so much. And to get that player, it's good for both sides. It shows the Mariners are serious about wanting to start contend and taking care of their young guys now. And then for Julio Rodriguez, he gets more money now than he would. He might, he might have cost himself a few $1,000,000 in the long run through the arbitration. But I mean, you're still talking about if the deal maxes out at 470 million, and I believe I don't even know how long the deal with. I think it's 2034 is the max it can go through. I want to say. So at that point, he would still be like through his age 33 season. So he could still go out to the market and get, another 4 or 6 year deal. I mean, who knows what we're looking at that, at that time with the DH and all that stuff, how it prolongs careers. He could still go out and get, another $100 million or something at that point. So it's really kind of cool to see a guy. Most of the time these young guys and teams either, hey, we want to wait, we want to play through the arbitration process, we want to keep the lower salary number, we want to just renew the contracts. And when it gets to that arbitration time, then we might talk about a deal there to take away a free agent year and give you some more money that we know what it's going to look like moving forward. So I think it's really good for both sides to agree on something, to lock something down, and to pay a player early for the production you're getting now, and then just kind of save yourself a few million later on down the line. But let's go ahead and jump over to probably the biggest news that we had happen, and that was over this past week. MLB announced the rule changes that will be coming for the 2023 season. Most of them are stuff we have pretty much expected to come into the game. Some of them we thought was going to come through the collective bargaining agreement that we had throughout the offseason. But the first one that is or has been confirmed is the pitch clock. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in with it, but initially there will be a 30-second timer between batters. The pitch must be started or the action within the 30 seconds. Between pitches with nobody on base, there's a 15-second timer. And with runners on base, it would be a 20-second timer. And they've limited pickoffs to 2 times through the at-bat. You can do it a third time, but if you miss it, the player automatically gets to move up to the next base. And there's a lot of other things that have to happen with the batter has to be in the box at the 8-second mark. A lot of moving pieces there. But the base of it is 30 seconds between batters, 15 seconds with nobody on, 20 seconds with runners on with a during an at bat. So how do you feel the game is going to change with that moving forward? I know we've seen it in the minor leagues so far.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. I don't have a problem with the pitch clock. Honestly, I watch a lot of college baseball too, and they've had a pitch clock for years, and you can really not. You really can't tell a difference when it comes to you know you can tell a difference when it comes to the pace of the game, but like the quality of the pitching and hitting and stuff, it really doesn't make that much of a difference, honestly. I think that in the big league, you hardly ever notice it. I think in the big leagues, there's probably a few pitchers that are notoriously slow that are going to have to adjust, but I think that it's definitely something that's interesting. The the pickoff thing might end up being kind of weird. You know, and honestly, it might be good for the game because it could increase the amount of times someone steals bases. If you got a limited number of pickoff throws, it might make you a little bit more reluctant to throw over. So, because if you throw twice over, well, then they know you're not throwing over unless you're willing to, you know, give up the base if you don't get them out. So, the marathon throwing over 30 times before a pitch, that kind of stuff, not going to happen anymore. Um, I'm sure that there will be some complaints about that from pitchers and from managers and stuff, but and then having the batter, it could affect the game a little bit too with the batter, having to stay in the box because you watch a lot of big games and late games or something, trying to throw off a pitcher's rhythm. How many times does the batter call time? And then everyone's blaming the pitcher for not throwing. Well, the batter keeps calling time. So I think it's probably good for the pace of the game. I think that's probably the most positive move out of the 3 that we got.
Yeah. So, and just to clarify the what would happen if you didn't make the timer. If you don't make a timer, it's an automatic ball if you're the pitcher, and if you're the batter, it becomes an automatic strike if you're not
Yeah.
within the box on the 8-second mark. In the article I was reading, it doesn't say anything about how many times a batter can call time. So I would assume maybe that's only once per at bat or something. That's something that we'll have to see. I don't know how they all count that.
Yeah, and of course that's also to the discretion of the umpire. If
Right.
the umpire, they might put an emphasis on, you know, if he's got a bug in his eye, let him call time. If he's, if
Doing
the
it to mess with the pitcher.
if he's just doing it like 2 or 3, 4 times, then don't let him slow the game down that much. Just let the pitcher throw.
Yeah.
So
Yep. So one of the other rules that we had, because I'm going to save the big one for last one, we've talked about a lot. The second rule that we had changed is that the bases are going to get a little bit bigger. So right now they're traditionally a 15-inch square. starting next year, they will be an 18-inch square, and obviously home plate is not going to be included in that. It's just the first, second, and third base bags. The idea here is to give the players and fielders a little bit more room to operate. We've seen a lot this year of collisions at first base, people getting stepped on, and then with how fast runners have to go into second base and third base now, you see them often come off the bag a little bit more. You see a lot more collisions there with fingers and hands, and it's just to give the fielder and the player a little bit of more room to kind of operate around the bag and make it a little bit safer.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're probably not going to be able to tell too much of a difference with this change either. But you might see guys, maybe you might be able to see some players show their athleticism just a little bit more, be a little bit more creative with their slides than they even are now. I mean, that's become such a big thing in the last several years, is being real creative with your slides and being able to, swim move and, go to the outside of the bag and stuff, and that gives you an extra few inches to work with. And then I'm glad that first base. I mean, we've seen so many times, guys get hurt. Especially pitchers running over trying to find the bag while they're catching the ball. Step on first base and not they're not being a lot of room there, and obviously get stepped on, get your ankle stepped on. That could be really bad. I mean, I remember several cases where that broke a pitcher's ankle. And that's never a good thing. So, for safety reasons, I think that's good at first base, and then the other two, I think it's more of a competition. Maybe trying to increase the running on the base paths a little bit more. But I think both of those rules kind of encourage running a little bit more, which is really, I think, a good thing for the game to have more stolen bases, have that excitement between pitches. Have the showcase that skill of that speed just a little bit more again. That's something that we've seen go away a lot recently. So maybe bringing that back will be a good thing.
Yeah, and part of me actually thinks that this might be a bigger on-field product change than the pitch clock. I mean, think about just the amount of bang bang plays we have happen right now. Like even that, I mean, the 3 inches might not seem like a lot, but when it comes to an instance of, you're consistently seeing between little cleats. I mean, cleats to when the back of the ball hits the back of the glove, the bang bang plays at first base. How quick fielders are going to have to get rid of the ball now. And just runners running down the baseline, steals. I mean, steals would probably be more successful because of both of those, like you mentioned. But it's just going to give those guys a little extra, a little extra bag to get to. I think it might be a bigger on-field change than the pitch clock, honestly, because I think you'll see more people becoming safe on plays, and you're going to see fielders have to rush more and potentially making even more mistakes while trying to hurry up and make that throw for wherever they got to get to. But the last rule change that was announced, at least right now, was one of the ones that's been a hot commodity for many years, and it's the ban of the shift. There's been many different instances of ways that it could have gone. We've saw the minor leagues do that little pie shaped from the back of second base to the outfield. They didn't announce that specifically, but what they did announce is that the shift will be coming in the instance of 4 infielders must be on the infield dirt at all times, and 2 fielders must be on each side of second base at all times. And that's pre-pitch, so obviously they can go out there as as the pitch is happening or whatever. But it won't stop them from using a shallow fourth outfielder or an outfielder. I mean, if you want to bring your right fielder down and have him play that shallow second base, you can always do that, but then you're leaving right field open. No more 4-man outfields and no more 5-man infields, but you're not going to see the second baseman playing in short right field or what you saw a couple years ago with Manny Machado making a catch in the foul line in right field.
Yeah, if you're gonna ban the shift, I think this is the way to go about it. I mean, don't make it so complicated with the whole like pie shape thing. That was just the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. But with the infield and marking lines on the dirt that tell you where you have to play, but the whole I would prefer them not ban the shift at all. But if you're going to, this doesn't really ban the shift, because you could have your shortstop play like a foot to the left of second base instead of like a foot to the right of second base, and then have your have your second baseman play on the with his big toe barely touching the dirt on both feet. You know, so I mean, you're still going to see the shift, but it's just not going to be quite as pronounced. You're not going to have the whole like, third baseman running around playing right field, shallow right field, having that 4-man outfield. So I get that to a certain level. I don't really like banning the shift in general. I think that part of the skill set of the game is that some guys are able to have their swings tailored to hit the ball to all fields. It helps some players who don't have the same kind of power be able to make it to the big league level. Guys like Stephen Kwan, Joey Wendell, those types of players. They're guys that I think are their skill set's going to be taken away a little bit because now you know you got guys like Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman and these guys who are they can just they're as biggest victims of the shift out there of and they can just pull the ball and hit for a 450 BABIP every year, because nobody can play them how they need to be played. But um, we'll see what happens. I think I don't know if this is going to quite do what the MLB wants it to do to the game. Um, it might increase singles just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to have quite the effect that people think it might. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And like I say, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think this rule's taken so much away from the way that positioning's already done that it's like unwatchable or anything. I mean, if they were doing the pie shape crap that they were talking about, I would have been really angry about that. But this one's okay for me with the you know, just a real simple rule saying, hey, you need two players on each side and they need to be on the infield. Like that's okay.
Yeah, I don't mind the shift right now. I mean, I really don't. To me, it's like you mentioned. I'm fine with players having to learn to hit the ball all over the place, right? if if you were going to do the shift ban, the only thing I don't like about it, right? You can say very easily like, hey, make sure both players, two players are on each side of second base. I don't have an issue with that. My thing is don't tell them they have to be on the infield dirt. If you still want to have your second baseman play in short right field, well, then you're going to lose that positional advantage of having your second baseman play up short. If the chopper happens right there, or they want to do something right, like that should be fine.
Yeah.
Um, if you still are so hell bent on stopping that lefty, the lefty hitter that it pulls the ball hard through the hole right there, if you're still really wanting to stop that, then you're going to have to lose the advantage of if they can just hit a soft ground ball that way now, and then it's more than often they'll be safe.
Yeah,
Um,
and to go along with your point you're making right now, that takes away for baseball wants to add that speed skill set back into the game on the base paths. They want to add that that ability and that takes away because I mean you can't really shift a fast guy right now in the same way that you can shift like like
a Joey
Anthony
Gallo.
Rizzo or yeah like they're going to shift Anthony Rizzo by playing all their guys in the outfield because they know he can't run. But then when Michael Harris comes up and he's one of the faster players in baseball that pulls the ball on the ground a lot, you're not going to shift him with the guy in the outfield because he's fast. So
Right.
you're not going to throw him out. So that's something that I think that's a unintended consequence of this is that I think that it makes it a lot easier for you know guys. It makes it a lot harder for speed guys to make it into the to have an advantage with their speed. Although, like I say, I don't know how many hits a year that really get affected by that. I mean,
It,
it's like it might add 5 hits a year for some players with this change, and it might take away 5 hits a year from other players. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it won't make a difference on single player based. I mean, I don't think at least all that much. Like, all you're allowing is you're giving them more of an opportunity that their hard hit balls will be hits. I mean, we primarily see it with lefty hitters, right? Like, we primarily see it with the Joey Gallos, with the Anthony Rizzo, with the Matt Olsons. Like, the lefty power hitters are usually the guys you see this happen. The Jock Peterson. Like, all it allows is those harder hit balls are going to be able to sneak through a little bit more, right? On a player basis, that's really not a big deal. Like you're mentioning, five, I mean, maybe at most 10 hits a year. At most. I think what it does is it is the team aspect that they're looking at. Like, well, if that one player gets on, well, now this player comes up with somebody on base, and if they are, not hitting with the shift either, maybe that adds a 10 hits to them, and then those 10 hits added to 10 hits, that's 20 hits, and then if it's a double, that becomes a run scored. I mean, there's so many there that I could see why they want to do it from a team aspect. I just don't love totally the way of saying, hey, you have to play here, like you have to play this. I mean, I think that's always what I've liked about baseball is you don't have a primary thing of where you have to play. Like it's a set rule that way. It was kind of really open, and I guess now they've just seen that as being a real issue there. But on a grand scale, I don't know how much it's going to change. Single player wise, I think it's going to change more team wide. Is where you're really going to see the change.
Yeah.
The last piece that we had of really big news, at least, was something we were supposed to talk about a couple weeks ago, where the minor league players were signing a petition to the MLBPA to submit a form to be voluntarily recognized as a union or to unionize themselves. And then over the past week, we had Rob Manfred on one of his media scrums when he was announcing the rule changes for that. Said the MLB will voluntarily recognize the minor league's efforts to unionize with the MLB Players Association, and it will basically allow the MLB to formally collective bargain for the MLBPA Jesus, I am messing up all day today. It will allow the MLB Players Association to collectively bargain for minor league players moving forward.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I think that, well, for one thing, I don't think it's really matters what MLB recognizes because, I mean, like they're gonna have to recognize it, like it or not. I mean, so, but the whole like that this has never been done before with the MLBPA accepting the minor leaguers into their organization, which is something that I think if we remember back, I think I might have criticized. I know I felt this way, but I don't know if I ever talked about it on the show, criticizing the MLBPA for talking all this stuff about trying to help younger players out, and a lot of the moves that they made in the collective bargaining agreement were trying to get free agency where you could make more money. And I said that they really need to focus in on, if to help players in general, they need to focus in on the minor leagues because that's a problem. And I think this is a way that they can attempt to help that. Now, I think that in some ways this could be a good thing because the players need to have a voice, the minor league players, and they need to be able to come together because it seems like they have never really kind of collectively had a voice, and it's just kind of but the problem that they have is that they don't have the same leverage. I mean, if you're talking about MLB players have a ton of leverage. A lot of minor league players, there's some minor league players that would have leverage. A lot of really really high rated prospects, top rated guys. Recent first, second, third round draft picks. High paid draft picks, high paid international free agents. They're going to have a pretty good voice, but most minor leaguers, I mean, you just look at the sheer numbers are guys who were senior signs out of college and are just playing because they like playing baseball and are making their low amount of money and just trying to make it in the game. And the problem is that they don't have a lot of leverage because the major leagues, I mean, you're already seeing them cut out some minor league teams and cut down on the amount of minor league players out there. And I think that these major league owners are just going to say, when they try to come to the bargaining table, say, hey, we're not going to budge on this because these teams aren't really making us that much money. They're just kind of there. So, all we really need is a developmental league, which we can consolidate again and take instead of having a low A, high A, rookie ball, double A, triple A, have A, double A, triple A ball, and take out a lot of these organizational players. I think that could end up being an unintended consequence where you just lose a lot of jobs in the minor leagues. But we'll see. At the end of the day, I think that it would be really, really, really good if they could find a way to, make some improvements. I mean, my God, these guys, and really from a team standpoint, I don't understand how, if you've got all these top prospects, I don't understand how a team could limit them from it's almost impossible to develop in the types of conditions that they're in. I mean, they cannot focus anything on nutrition. They can't focus on, healthy habits. They can't focus on their training. Like in the off season, they're having to work, an extra job or two because they're not making enough money to support themselves, which takes away from the amount that they could be focusing in on getting better at baseball. Like I don't understand how players develop as it is. And I think that teams that make go on the forefront of this just by choice could end up, helping their organizations out and have better players in general. But either way, I think this will be interesting to see how this unfolds. And the one other thing I'll say too, it's going to be a long time before we see any consequences of this because the way unions work, this announcement happened, but it's going to be like it takes a long time for this to get legally recognized. I know MLB is recognizing it and the Players Association is recognizing it and stuff, but there's a long process to get this to where they even come to a bargaining table. It could be 5 years before that happens. So it's something to look forward to in the future, and it's very important news. And it'll be interesting to see what happens as it unfolds.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it's going to look like. Um, you know, moving forward in 5 years, in 10 years, like what is that goal? Is the minor league players agreement, along with the CBA of MLB's, the MLBPA's one, like does that expire when the regular CBA expires? Is that when they start their negotiating processes? What is that? I think it's 2026 after that. Is that, I think it's a 5 year deal that we got now with the newest CBA. Is that when the negotiations start? Are negotiations already starting? Like, what in grand aspect is it going to be? I mean, it obviously they're going to fight for better pay, better, facilities, better travel, better, all around the everything. They want to upgrade their quality of life, their style of life in the minor leagues. But to what extent? To what point is that going to get to? When does that happen? I mean, there's so many more questions. I think that this opens up. We saw the push for minor league baseball over the last year really start kicking into high gear. We saw them already get, housing included. We've already seen them up minor league pay. Um, we've seen some of the other things that some minor league teams or some major league teams are providing better nutrition options for the minor leagues. We've seen this gradually start happening, but for them to get into the union, it's a big deal. But I think that opens up more questions. How is everything going to happen? When is everything going to happen? What's it going to look like? Um, you know, like you said, is it going to be like, hey, maybe we got the quality better, but now we're losing the quantity. Like, are we going to have less jobs now because we wanted the quality of the job to be better, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like you mentioned, the conditions that they work in now and that they are able to, or not able, that they live in now, they have to be able to live out this dream. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's not anything good for any of these players. The developmental path has been very, very hard for a long time. How can you improve that while also not losing the amount of players you have down there? Um, that's going to be fascinating to see how it really unfolds moving forward, and what this really, at the end of the day, what it really looks like. And is this something that's going to continue to be a thing? Or, I mean, are we going to have when they go to the negotiating table, is it going to be something where the MLBPA is able to agree to a major league CBA, but then not a minor league CBA? I mean, what happens? I mean, there's so many questions that have to be asked and answered that we will undoubtedly be getting over the next 5 years or so, to keep getting those answered. But let's go ahead and move on to another story we had. It's a milestone watch that we're on. It's the chase for Albert Pujols to get to 700 home runs, and he's hit back now to 497. I believe the last time we updated it, he was at 491, but now he's got up to
Yeah,
497 and
he
moved.
said about three. He said about 200 more than you're saying.
Oh, 697. Jeez, I don't know why I had
Yeah.
400. I don't know. I've been messing up all day long. Don't even regard this, okay? It's 697. Jesus, I'm literally looking at the screen where it tells me, and I still mess that up so many times. Um, he's moved into fourth all time, passing Alex Rodriguez on the all time home run list. He is now behind Bonds, Aaron, Ruth, but he's on the chase for 700. He's got 3 more to hit, and he's got about 2 to 2.5 weeks to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, how much fun has this been? Really, it's been crazy. Just watching Albert Pujols play, like, at the plate, be like, I don't know if I'd call him, 2010 Albert Pujols or something, or 2009 Albert Pujols, but he's been really good this year at the plate. It's been his best year since his last time he was in St. Louis. And I'm really kind of disappointed he's not getting more playing time this year. I mean, that might be part of the reason that he's been so successful, is just having that little extra rest at age 42. But it's been really cool to watch. We'll see if he gets there. I mean, I think we got 3 weeks left, right? Because we have, 2 weeks,
Yeah,
and
it
then we
was
have
pushed
they play
back.
into October because it's been pushed back. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he'll have to hit probably like what, one a week to get
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean, it's doable. I mean, hell, he had a 2-homer game that was almost a 3-homer game earlier this month, so he could do it in one. He could do it any night. It's possible. I mean, it's not likely he would do it in one night, but it's possible. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited. The Cardinals are going to be a fun team to watch down the stretch, just for that reason. And some of these home runs. I mean, I think his last one he hit a couple nights ago was like a game go ahead homer in the ninth inning too. I mean, he's helping the Cardinals an awful lot, which is cool to see him. It's not just Albert Pujols is playing well. I mean, he's legitimately been a solid player for a contender again, which is so much fun to see. Bringing him back has been everything St. Louis had hoped for this year, and honestly, I know he doesn't want to, but honestly, he could probably play again next year the way he's looked this year. Give it another go if he doesn't get the 700. But if he played next year, he could potentially get to Ruth, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. So
No, he's been pretty firm that
yeah,
this was it for him. Although if you look at the stats for him, if he came back next year as literally just strictly a lefty killer, I mean, this year against lefties, it's been 116 plate appearances. He has three. He's batting 363 with 12 homers. Like, that's really really good. Now, if you go against righties, he's batting 200 with 6 homers in more plate appearances, 171 plate appearances.
yeah,
Like, he's still really good against lefties. I mean, he can still get the job done. He can hit the occasional righty if you miss an off speed pitch to him. He struggles to catch up to the fastball, especially against righties, to this day still. But I mean, man, it's there was a long time there where throughout the season that I didn't think it was even feasible that he would get there. Now looking at it and like, hey, you need to hit like one a week. I mean, you could really see that. I mean, you really could, especially even if he gets hot and has a 2 homer game or a 2 homer week. I mean, then it gets really easy at that point. Um, and I think it's I'm relishing it for sure, but I think everyone it's able to relish this opportunity because it's going to be a long time until we see somebody, that's able to reach these marks again. I think who's the next active player on the list? I think it's Miguel Cabrera. He's at 506, and then like Nelson Cruz. I mean, the next like real active player is Giancarlo Stanton, who's at 373.
yeah, and
Like,
I don't think he'll be healthy enough to make it.
well, he's already
You know,
32. Yeah, so it's like,
to
I mean,
anything like remotely close to like I'm thinking 500. Like
yeah,
he
I
could maybe
mean,
make 500, but
you're looking at the next 500 option. I
yeah.
mean, who is it really? I mean, Harper, maybe. I mean,
I mean,
Arenado's
Stanton could
Aaron,
get there.
he could.
I
I mean,
mean,
he could technically get there,
yeah,
but I don't know. There's a lot to be said there, but it's just I'm relishing every opportunity we get to watch Albert Pujols right now because it's been
100%.
legitimately fun to watch him be kind of rejuvenated in St. Louis and know that maybe the rejuvenation is knowing that this is it and having more fun on each day, and being back there with Yachty and Adam Wainwright, who were staples of that franchise for so long.
Yeah, 100%. And one other, just while we're talking about milestone updates, we could end up having a fourth member of the 700 home run club, and I believe what would be the fifth member of the 60 home run club. fifth or sixth,
Yeah.
because Aaron Judge is now at 57. He's hit 2 homers tonight, so
Yep.
he's only got to hit 3 more to get to 60 on the year, and he very well could break Maris's Yankee record, which some people believe is the record, but I don't really, in the record books it says Bonds, so I think you go with Bonds, even if you might not like him, which I don't like him, but even if it's still that's what the record book says. But Maris's record does hold a little bit more credence to just a team record than a typical just team record would. So, but yeah, that was something else kind of to throw out there while we're on the talk about the milestone home runs. So
Yeah, absolutely. Because Judge has been on fire,
yep.
and it would be really cool to if he was able to hit that 62 or 63 homer mark and either tie or break the record of Roger Maris. But let's go ahead and jump over just a couple other little injury news things that we'll hit on, and then we'll jump to Player of the Week and wrap the show up. The first one being that Justin Verlander went to the IL with a calf injury a couple weeks ago. Sounds like he's starting to ramp his way back, and he might even be back within the next week or so. And then the other injury news is that Tony Gonsolin went to the IL with a right forearm strain for the Dodgers. I believe that was 2 weeks ago as well. He started throwing, but it really hasn't progressed to the way that he's throwing off a mound yet, and they aren't quite sure that he might even be able to return this year.
Yeah, so first off with Verlander, the Astros have such a big lead in their division, and they have such a good record that I don't think they're going to have to worry too much about Verlander. Just make sure he's fully ready to go. I would definitely try to get him 2 or 3 starts to kind of get back into a rhythm before the postseason, but just be cautious with him because you don't want a 39-year-old, any 39. You
Yeah.
don't want him, re-aggravating an injury that you don't really need to push him on right before the playoffs. So, that's definitely something I'd be cautious with him a little bit. And then, I mean, for Gonsolin, that hurts the Dodgers not to get him back. He was having a great year. I still don't think he's one of their top pitchers, but the Dodgers rotation is a little bit concerning because we've talked so many times about you just don't know what you're going to get from Kershaw with his injuries and he's had, and with Gonsolin out and Bueller out, and I know Dustin May's come back and I think he's looked pretty good, but
Yeah.
you know, you're missing a couple of those top end guys that you had. So I don't worry that much about the Dodgers because they're so deep and talented and they're really good. But you do, worry just a little bit about the rotation going into the postseason. I mean, if they end up having to play a 5-game series against New York or something, and you've got Urias versus DeGrom, and if Scherzer comes back, you've got Scherzer against, you know, I guess Dustin May would be their second guy. So
Kershaw would be.
or Kershaw if he's healthy. Yeah, I mean, you're starting to worry just a little bit about it. So, but we'll see what happens. I definitely think the Dodgers will be okay, but it does. Those injuries have piled up in their rotation. So
Yeah, it has been. And then, with Tyler Anderson's been a great story, but losing Bueller, losing Gonsolin if he's not able to come back. I mean, Gonsolin's been really good this year. I mean, even being a 3 starter in your playoff rotation, I mean, you take that from him. And then, what you've had to do with limiting Andrew Heaney some, who's looked really good in his time when he's pitched, but you have to limit him to keep him healthy. Um, it is a bigger concern there, but mentioned the team so deep, and there still is time for Gonsolin to come back. I mean, it has been a couple weeks. He has thrown at least, just not off a mound yet. So it's just one of those like take it day by day and see where they go and see how it is, because he could still potentially even come back without having to do any rehab stuff. But for on the Verlander side, that's a big piece for the Astros. He is their ace. He is their horse, the top of the rotation guy there. That you really need to be back if you want to make your deep run into the playoffs. He's the guy who, on the big game, you're going to put for Justin Verlander out there. He's looked phenomenal coming off the Tommy John surgery at age 39, a calf injury. It doesn't seem like it would be a big deal. Glad it's not anything to do with the arm. If you let it rehab some, take it slow on him, even if he makes one start before the postseason. I mean, to see what Verlander's done this year coming off Tommy John at 39, I have no worries about even if he doesn't pitch until the postseason again right now, that he'll come out and be just fine. he's looked like vintage Verlander, and he's looked so good so far this year that I'm not too worried, as long as the Astros aren't too worried, that he'll be able to make the recovery and be back at least for the postseason. But let's go ahead and jump over to players of the week and wrap it up. So, who do you have for your hitter this week?
So my hitter this week is a guy who we've talked about a lot as being really good because he's one of the best players of all time. But that would be Mike Trout. He has been insane this week. Um, it looks like today, I'm not sure if their game is completely over, but it might have ended. But he had been on a 7 game home run streak. So I think it might have ended already today. They were playing against Cleveland, but it looks like he didn't hit a home run today. So but he had been on a 7 game home run streak. He with obviously he didn't have I don't think he had any multi homer games in there, so it would be 7 home runs. But it's been after he came back from injury, he's finally got back into a rhythm. Over the past week, he's hit 350 with a 409 on base and a well above 1 slugging percentage. And he struck out. His strikeout rates come down some, in the past week because that's kind of been his problem this year. But a low batting average on balls in play has not hurt him enough because, well, his balls that he's hitting are going over the fence. But definitely been a good week for Mike Trout. The back seems to be healthy right now, which is really good. So, I'm glad to see him out there playing well.
Yeah, it's so fun watching Mike Trout play. And we've kind of I don't want to say robbed, but we've we've not been able to see that over the past couple years. I mean, he's battled the injuries over the past couple years, and even the back injury this year. And at the time, I mean, when we heard about the back injury and then the stories from him, we didn't know if he'd come back this year. We didn't know if he was going to come back at all. I mean, there was fear for a little while that it was going to be a career-ending back injury, and to see him able to come back and deal with what he's had to deal with through that and play just as good as we've ever seen Mike Trout play, and look just as athletic, and look like everything's still there. The burst of speed, the power, the eye. I mean, everything is still there. It's not like he's having to sacrifice anything to make this happen. It's been really fun to see, and I'm really, really glad that we're able to see the best player. I mean, who's in the conversation to be the best player of all time back to being himself. Because the game needs it, and the game is so much better and fun when you see that guy out there. But for my hitter this week, I ended up going with Bo Bichette from the Toronto Blue Jays. He's really had a past couple weeks that have been insane, but so far over the last week, he's hitting 480 with a 536 on base percentage and a over 1 slugging as well for a 351 WRC plus, almost a full win above replacement. Had 3 homers, 9 runs, 9 RBIs. Walked a little bit more than he normally does. He's at 7%, 14% strikeout rate, which is a little lower than he normally does. And he's kind of carried the Toronto Blue Jays offense. I know, and I think it might not even be on these stats, but they had a doubleheader against the Orioles. I believe it was last Tuesday, or yeah, I think it was last Tuesday. He had like 3 homers throughout the doubleheader and like 6 or 7 RBIs that day alone. And he's really just kind of carried that Blue Jays offense, who's been struggling as of late.
Yeah, so Bo Bichette's a guy who everyone was kind of talking about how he had been disappointing this year, and then all of a sudden, like over the past, definitely the last couple weeks, but over the past month or two, he's kind of turned back into the guy we kind of thought he might be. I mean, he's up to a 128 WRC plus on the season now, and today, I mean, not in he's played in a doubleheader today, and he's got 3 hits and 9 plate appearances today. So, um, he's been really, really, really good as of late, and he's brought his stat line on the season. He's up to 4 WAR on the season. So definitely a good season for Bo Bichette after what for a while looked kind of rough, but he's definitely turned the corner back around.
Absolutely, he has. So, who do you have for your pitcher this week?
So my pitcher this week, I went ahead and picked a guy who I think he gets swept under the radar just a little bit. He had, in 2020 just had an insane season in the shortened year and won the Cy Young. Really should have won the MVP too, but over the past this season and last season, he's still been really good. Just maybe not quite the same guy as he was in that shortened season, but he is Shane Bieber over the past 2 weeks. 14 innings pitched, or 14 and a third innings. He's only given up, I believe, 1 run in those innings. He's pitched which is to a 126 ERA or 1 earned run. He's striking out guys. He's not walking guys. On the season, he's up to 173 innings, which after last year he battled some injury. He'll probably get close to 200 innings. Maybe just a couple innings shy of that. Depending on how those last 4 or 5 starts go. But a 291 ERA on the season now, a 283 FIP. He's up above 4 wins above replacement. Shane Bieber has been really, really good this year, and people haven't really talked about him too much. But I wanted to throw him in here, not just because he's had a great couple of weeks, but one other thing too is that Cleveland has kind of taken over that division. They've got a 3-game lead now, so it's just a few weeks to play. So they're kind of, I mean, they haven't pulled away. It's not over yet, but they've definitely put themselves in a good position, and Shane Bieber has been a very large part of that. So thought it was a good opportunity to shout him out a little bit.
Yeah, he really has flown under the radar this year. I know he started off pretty rough, but I mean, he was coming off an injury from last year, and he was. I mean, we've seen a lot of the stuff with his spin rates and stuff. He was a big merchant of the sticky stuff ban or crackdown. But I mean, overall, if you look at it, he's having his best full season he's ever had. I mean, 2020 in the 77 innings, he had a 163 ERA, a 262 expected ERA with a 207 FIP, and the XFIP was insane as well. But I mean, looking at it this year, a 291 ERA, the expected ERA is still a little high, but a 283 FIP and a 3 XFIP. I mean, he's been just as good, if not better, than we've seen Shane Bieber outside of that, the 12 games in 2020. He's been probably the best version of himself. And it's not really been talked about. And he was, one of the high level starters that 2019, 2020 year, going even into 2021 through his 16 games he had last year as well. So he really has flown under the radar, and people forget how good he really is, and how good his command really is. I mean, has what I mean, almost his lowest walk rate ever in his career. I mean, 1.82 walks per nine. His lowest is 1.68. I mean, it's right there. He's not striking as many people out, but I mean, that's probably just part of the sticky stuff crackdown for him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and he's fourth in the American League in WAR for pitchers.
Yeah.
So just he's having a great year, and and that's behind Kevin Gossman, Justin Verlander, and Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not no shame in that, and I think
No.
he's had a fantastic year. So he's also pitched more innings than any of those guys too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely a great year for Shane Bieber.
Absolutely. Well, for my pitcher this week, I went with a guy who tied the record for most consecutive quality starts in a season at 24 just yesterday, and that's Framber Valdez from the Houston Astros as well. I believe he's at 24 now is the mark, and has just been insane this year in general. Over the last week, he had 2 starts, one against Texas that was 6 2/3. He gave up 4 runs, but only 2 of them were earned. Had 11 strikeouts in that game. And then yesterday against Detroit, he went 9 innings, 6 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, and 8 strikeouts. On the week, I believe it was. Let me get back to it. I hit the wrong page. A 115 ERA and a 165 FIP for leading the league in WAR for pitching for the week at .7.
Yeah, I mean, Framber Valdez is so interesting. He's kind of a little bit of a throwback type pitcher. I mean, he's got a 66% ground ball rate. I mean, that's just insanely high. Does not give up the home run just because if you don't hit it in the air, it's hard to hit it over the fence. And that he's got pretty average strikeout rates, pretty average walk rates, but man, just getting that ball on the ground, that good sinker, good curveball, guys rolling over it, chopping it right into the infield, and it plays well for the Astros because their infield defense is really good. between Bregman at third and Jeremy Pena, who's been incredible at shortstop this year, and Altuve is still a pretty decent defender at second. So that's been fantastic for them, and it's a good fit for him. And man, Framber Valdez has been really good. He silenced a lot of critics who didn't believe that a pitcher could make it in 2022 with average stuff, who based by just pitching well and not giving up a lot of fly balls, getting the ball on the ground, kind of pitching a throwback type of guy. So it's a lot of fun to watch him.
Yeah, and he's done it with the right team. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think if you'll see him with a lot of other teams be as successful, but the Astros are one of the best defensive infield teams that you're going to have. I mean, with Bregman, Pena, Altuve, and then at first base, it's I mean Yuli Gurriel's been playing most of the time there, but that's a really good defensive infield. And if he were to go to, I don't know, I mean, if you were to see him in Detroit or in Kansas City or one of those other places, I'm not sure you get the same production out of him. I mean, you have to have a strong infield defense, and the Astros have been on the forefront of that, on the forefront of the shifts and the analytical moves there, and they've played a lot into that, and it's really helped a guy like Framber Valdez take that extra step forward, um, because he's a guy who, for a couple of years, I mean, he looked pretty good the last couple of years, but he didn't look near this level. And he's been a guy who you can look at and say he's probably a top of the rotation starter. Now it'll be interesting to see how that plays once you get into a postseason series, because usually in the postseason you see the high strikeout guys kind of take over, and dominate there, where the guys who limit the hard contact but get don't strike out as many people, and the high velocity guys, they usually tend to falter a little bit in the playoffs. But I mean, you could still see a guy like Framber be very successful moving forward.
yeah.
But anything else you wanna wrap up on before we wrap up the show?
Not too much. Just again, I want to reiterate that excited about adding David to the show full time. That'll be exciting, and in the baseball world, just got about 3 weeks left. Going to be interesting 3 weeks. I think that a lot of the divisions are pretty well in hand right now. I haven't really looked, you know, at least the last few minutes, or last day or two. The AL Central still a bit of a battle. The NL East is really close. The Braves actually took a lead at one point in the past few days and had a half game lead, and then they've lost back-to-back game. They've lost 3 games in a row, and the Mets have won a couple. So the Mets are back in first place now, but that one's really close. But other than those two, everything's pretty well decided when it comes to um, the divisional races, and then the wild card races are still interesting. But we'll definitely have a little bit more discussion on that front next week. With it being the last couple weeks, but definitely interesting. It's been a fun season. Maybe in the next couple weeks we can discuss a little bit of our potential, award type guys, a little bit too, depending on what all other news might come out. So, but we'll see what happens, and just it's gonna be a fun finish to the season, and we got postseason baseball here in just a few weeks, so it'll be an interesting postseason. Can't believe it's already here.
Yeah, it's really flown by this year. The division races are wrapping up. We'll start seeing clinch scenarios, and clinches start happening. I believe last night the
Right.
Dodgers clinched a postseason
They
spot. They'll clinch
so
tonight if they win or the Padres lose. They'll clinch the
so
division.
so it was interesting last night. I know you probably watched the Dodgers game, but they came out today and said actually they didn't clinch.
No. They hadn't clinched on Sunday
Right.
when they
Oh
thought
yeah.
they clinched, but they
Okay,
clinched
that's what
last night.
it was. Gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha, gotcha.
yeah. It
I
was
got the days.
it was said that they clinched on Sunday, and then it was a weird scenario where, like, if they lost every single game, the Cardinals had to go like exactly like 13-7 the rest of the way. The
Yeah.
Brewers had to go like exactly. There were so many. It was literally like a four-way scenario that would have had to
Right.
happen, that they
But
would have lost a tiebreaker in the wild
yeah,
card.
but it's not a
Um,
clinch.
it's not a clinch. But they did clinch last night, and their magic number's 1 for the division, so that should happen by the time we talk next
Yeah,
week.
in fact, I think they're ahead already tonight. So
Yeah, Gallo hit a 2-run homer already.
yeah.
So, Yeah, but I mean, very excited to bring David onto the show full time now. It's been something that we've kind of discussed, beforehand. I mean, David was even one of the ones that I was talking to when we originally had this idea of making a podcast, of having him on as the co-host, and it just didn't work out at the time. Now it's worked out that we can have all three of us on, and I think it's going to be a very big addition moving forward. I think it's going to add a lot content wise. I think it's going to open up a lot of different options for us moving forward as a show, and the opportunities that we're going to have moving forward with that. And what else that brings, we'll see. But it's a very exciting step, and I think it's a massive change for the show moving forward. And I couldn't be happier to have David on and to have Matt still with us. So thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Batflip Podcast. Thank you all for the support, and we will catch you guys next week.